predicting a Yellowstone supervolcano eruption. How far in advance could scientists predict such a thing? Well, USGS says, concerning the natural hazards, the science of forecasting a volcanic eruption has significantly advanced in over the past 25 years. Most scientists think that the buildup preceding a catastrophic eruption, we're talking about a super eruption, would be detectable for weeks and perhaps months to years. Precursors to volcanic eruptions include strong earthquake swarms and rapid ground deformation, and typically take place days to weeks before an actual eruption. Scientists at the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, the YVO, closely monitor the Yellowstone region for such precursors, and they expect that the build-up to larger eruptions would include intense precursory activity, far exceeding background levels, at multiple spots within the Yellowstone volcano. As at many caldera systems around the world, small earthquakes, ground uplift and subsidence, and gas releases at Yellowstone are commonplace events and do not reflect impending eruptions. And what is a supereruption? The term supervolcano implies a volcanic center that has had an eruption of magnitude 8 on the Volcano Explosivity Index, the VEI, meaning that at one point in time it erupted more than 1,000 cubic kilometers or 240 cubic miles of material. In the early 2000s, the term supereruption began being used as a catchy way to describe a VEI 8 eruption. And why are there so many earthquakes at Yellowstone? Almost all earthquakes here at the supervolcano at Yellowstone are brittle failure events caused when rocks break due to crustal stresses. Though we have been looking at Yellowstone for years, no one has yet identified long period events, or LP events, commonly attributed to magma movement. If LP events are observed, that will not mean Yellowstone is getting ready to erupt. LP earthquakes commonly occur at other volcanoes in the world, including volcanoes in California that have not erupted for centuries or millennia. One variety of ground shaking, called a tremor, is observed in Yellowstone's geothermal areas whenever water boils in a geyser. The largest historic earthquake in the Rocky Mountains was magnitude 7.3 at Hebgen Lakes. We're talking about the Yellowstone area. That's in the area just outside of the border of the Yellowstone Park. It's in Montana and northwest of Yellowstone, and that took place in 1957, August 17. It was caused by the extension or the stretching of the Earth's crust. The earthquake displaced a 40-kilometer long fault, that's 25 miles long, that rose vertically up to 40 feet. Shaking from earthquake can also change the way that Yellowstone's hydrothermal systems behave. We're talking about the geysers, the fumaroles, the mud pots, the various springs. The interval between eruptions of Old Faithful Geyser increased significantly after that 1959 earthquake. As to when the next large earthquake will occur in Yellowstone, earthquakes cannot be predicted yet, but modern surveillance conducted with seismographs, instruments that measure earthquakes locations and magnitudes, and the global positioning systems, the GPS instruments that measure slow ground movements, help scientists understand the state of stress in the Earth's crust. Those stresses could trigger earthquakes as well as magma movement. Yellowstone lies within a tectonically active region of western United States, and large earthquakes have occurred there in the past, like, as we said, the 1959 magnitude 7.3 Hebgen Lake earthquake, west of Yellowstone National Park. And they will occur again in the future, but it's impossible to know when. The University of Utah uses seismograph stations to carefully monitor earthquakes in the greater Yellowstone area and works with other Yellowstone Volcano Observatory partners to keep watch on the entire volcanic system. Now, can earthquakes trigger volcanic eruptions? We know that we've had earthquakes nearby, if you want to call them nearby, that have caused quake swarms in Yellowstone. For example, the Denali earthquake in Alaska caused earthquake swarms in Yellowstone. The Haiti earthquake caused earthquake swarm increases in Yellowstone. We even noticed that the recent 7.1 earthquake in Ridgecrest caused an increased amount of quakes in Yellowstone. Now, we also learned that the magma, the mantle plume that supplies West Coast California, the high threat volcanoes, is the same mantle plume that splits to the east, going up through Utah and into Yellowstone, feeding Yellowstone. Now, can earthquakes trigger volcanic eruptions? Sometimes, yes. A few large regional earthquakes, greater than 6 magnitude, are considered to be related to a subsequent eruption or to some type of unrest at a nearby volcano. And we recently had the 5.7 that came out of nowhere in Salt Lake City, Utah, which sits right on the mantle plume that feeds Yellowstone. And it was big. So it was in an area that it was very soft because, as we know, Salt Lake City is in the area just south of Salt Lake. And it's in an area of very soft sediment because that area is basically a land-filled lake. So it looks like the ripples were felt in the area of the park of Yellowstone. It was big. 5.7 in Utah was big, and they're still shaking. They're still having aftershocks. So they say here that a few large regional earthquakes greater than magnitude 6 are considered to be related to a subsequent eruption or to some type of unrest at a nearby volcano. And we know that Utah has 8 volcanoes, and the last one erupted 660 years ago with lava. But volcanoes can only be triggered into eruption by nearby tectonic earthquakes if they are already poised to erupt. This requires 2 conditions to be met. 1, enough eruptible magma within the volcanic system, and 2, significant pressure within the magma storage region. If those conditions exist, it's possible that large tectonic earthquakes might cause dissolved gases to come out of the magma, like a shaken soda bottle, for example, increasing the pressure and possibly leading to an eruption. This is all information from USGS. And this is a diagram of the cross-section of the mantle plume. On the left, we have the mantle plume depth, and we also have the cross-section on the right coming from Baja. And here it shows the section of the east plume, the arm that goes through the area of Utah, where we've been having the recent earthquakes, and also up into Yellowstone, as you can see. The west arm that is not shown here goes into the western part of California, feeding the high threat volcanoes, which most of them sit on the Walker Lane fault system. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.